Welcome to Unscripted with Russo. For our podcast, we decided to explore the people behind the narratives. I'll introduce decision makers and influencers and find out the intimate story behind their rise to success. Welcome to Unscripted with Russo. I'm your host, Ashley Russo, and I am here with Janish Kothari. He is a doctor at St. Luke's University Health Network, and he is a cardiology fellow. Janish, thank you for being with us.
Thank you, Ashley, for having me. I'm very excited to, have this chat with you and see where we go.
Well, it was great to kind of discover you on social media. I know that you are an influencer on Instagram and you love fashion. And I'm interested in the intersection of where that passion and your passion for cardiology and medicine comes in. But before we get to that, I want to learn a little bit more about you. Tell me a little bit about your childhood, where you grew up, and when you came to the States.
My parents are originally from India. I was actually born there. I came here when I was about 9 months to about a year. And then we moved to New Jersey, and I grew up in Jersey City, and I'm 32 now. So I pretty much have been in the States for about 31 years of my life. I went to high school there in, the local high school. And then I went on to go to Rutgers University in New Brunswick campus, where I did my college, majored in biology. After that, I took about a year and a half off. I did some research and then got some publications out. And then I went out to med school at St. George's University in the Caribbean, in Grenada, which is the island where it's at. And then when I came back here to New York, I did a lot of my rotations there, where, my clinical rotations and things like that. And then I went on to doing my residency in internal medicine at New York Presbyterian. And then here I am at St. Luke's doing cardiology fellowship. Absolutely loving it.
We're happy you ended up in the Lehigh Valley, which is really cool. I want to talk about the influence of Indian culture and your family on your upbringing while you moved here very young. Tell me about your family. Do you have siblings, your parents' jobs? Sort of what role did your Indian heritage play in your childhood?
I'm one of two siblings. My sister's 5 years older than me. She's also a physician. She's a gastroenterologist and a hepatologist. And my parents, they don't have college educations or anything like that. They came here with kind of like chips on their shoulders and the traditional chasing of the American dream, if you must, My mom worked like a factory job. My dad tried doing all those things, but growing up in India, we had like a farm and we're business owners, and he was, smart, and he was kind of successful there. So when he came here, he's like having to start at the bottom. That's just not something that he was very much accustomed to. So then he started his own wholesale business and company and things like that. Literally came here with $70 in his pocket, and he was able to, build somewhat of an empire, put me and my sister through college and medical school. And I think that's where a lot of my work ethic and kind of my sister's hustle comes from, is just kind of seeing them like working multiple jobs and sacrificing sleep and never saying no to us when we ask for something. And I think that's where a lot of the drive comes from.
That's such an amazing story of tenacity and determination. And I love hearing that. How did that influence you as a kid? I mean, you mentioned seeing your parents working so hard and also always providing for you and your sister. Are you at a place in your life where you've got the perspective to look back and think about really what that sacrifice must have been for them?
I don't know if it's maybe like an Indian culture thing. Our story's by no means unique because, it's the traditional immigrant story. So growing up in my family, my mom is one of 12. So all of my cousins and aunts and uncles, they've all done very similar things. So growing up, you got to witness a lot of everybody in your family doing this. And we have an immense appreciation for our parents. So I think I learned this at a very young age. And I've always kind of adopted that, failure isn't an option, because my parents had given up so much just to come here, just so me and my sister and, my other extended family could have better opportunities. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
So we kind of saw that.
What kind of kid were you? Tell me a little bit about, Janish at 7 or Janish at 12. Like, tell me, what were you interested in? What kind of activities, hobbies, sports did you like?
Janish, up until very recently, I guess you can say, was somewhat of a troublemaker. I don't know. I always just found myself in mischief. I always got my hands dirty, and anywhere I can create somewhat of a ruckus, I was doing that. And growing up, quite honestly, my parents were like, they don't know what's going to happen with me in my life, because they were thinking about putting me in counseling and therapy and all that kinds of stuff, because I just had a lot of energy and just wanted to express it some way.
Yeah, so a little bit of a natural disruptor, we might call that.
Somewhat like that, yeah. Yes.
And what did you do to channel that? Were there things you were involved in, or whether it was clubs, music, sports? Like, obviously you love fashion now. How did you start to channel that energy? Because I hear what you're saying. And I said, my husband might tell a somewhat similar story. He's much older than you, but he's also a physician. And his mom would say, and people who listen to this podcast have heard this before, but she used to go into his teachers and say, you have to give Joseph all the extra jobs. Make him clap the erasers, make him take out the trash, send him back and forth to the office to keep him physically busy, to keep his mind busy. But much like you, he's very bright and was able to channel that. So what was a turning point for you to be able to channel that energy into a direction like medicine?
Growing up, where I grew up, the sports were a big thing, basketball, football, that kind of thing. So I got my hands involved in that kind of stuff. And, organized sports are kind of a way to channel that energy and refocus it towards something. But being a smaller guy, I'm like 5'8", 160 pounds. I wasn't like that in high school. I was 4'10", the smallest kid in high school. So I got like bullied a lot and stuff like that. But sports was like a way to kind of get that out. And it was just a means of me kind of expressing myself and kind of utilizing that energy. And by the time I got home, I was just exhausted to, be disruptor that I was.
I love it. So when you found medicine, was that in college or did you set out on that path in high school?
In the Indian culture, I don't know how many people you've interviewed that have Indian heritage and stuff like that.
I happen to have some very, very dear friends that are Indian and have been around since I was younger. So I've grown up with a lot of influence. I've been to Indian weddings, which is just an unbelievable, indescribable experience if people have not experienced that. And it's a very strong family culture centered around food, family, fellowship, kind of reminds me, I'm Catholic, I'm Italian. It's very similar in that regard. Yes. I have a lot of Jewish friends. It's very similar in that regard. And it's that common bond, large families that have a similar basis, I guess.
Yeah. But, growing up in Indian culture, you're kind of already expected to do a few things, become a lawyer, become a physician, a business guy, or like an engineer, Yeah. So that kind of was already in the back of my mind. But surprisingly, my parents weren't that pushy. They just wanted us to go to college and like do something and, be able to provide for ourselves. So medicine was something that I was always having in the back of my mind because science was something I excelled at. Math was just not something that really appealed to me. It wasn't something that I was able to pick up that easily. And science was something that I excelled at without, to be honest, like having to try too hard. So it's something that just kind of, fell into my lap. Before medicine, I actually wanted to be a fashion designer. I just kind of was drawn to arts and creative expressions. And I guess it was another way for me to kind of channel that extra energy that I had into something creative. I was drawn to people like Frank Sinatra, Humphrey Bogart, and the way they presented themselves and things like that. Growing up in the Indian household, telling my dad that I wanted to be a fashion designer, he was like, wait, what?
I would love to have been a fly on the wall for that conversation. Yeah, that undercurrent of professionalism, education, super important in the Indian culture. And it's kind of interesting. Do you feel that there was influence on you from you said your parents didn't give you a lot of pressure, but you were in a culture and a big family system where maybe that was the undercurrent?
I wouldn't say it was pressure, but it was more like everybody that was older than me, my cousins and, my aunts and uncles that were on the younger side, they were all doing things. Everybody in my family is relatively successful in one way or another. We have a lot of doctors, lawyers, and dentists and, engineers and things like that, and bankers. So success was kind of like something that everybody in my extended family was accustomed to. So you just kind of had to keep up with the Joneses, but the Joneses are all your cousins, So that was something that was kind of just ingrained in us. And we kind of fed off that energy. In my age group, there's like 6 of us and all of us have done something, pretty great. So even the ones that are older than me by a year or two, I was just kind of following their footsteps, following my sister's footsteps. And they just kind of laid out the path for us.
Well, Janish, I want to learn more about your path and where you've gone and where you are at St. Luke's now, but we're going to take a quick break. So everybody stick with us. We'll be right back. You're listening to Unscripted with Russo. As a mother of 2, I know it can be tough to find activities that everyone will enjoy. Luckily, the Lehigh Valley has so many ways to treat your family without breaking the bank. You can experience cool discoveries at the Da Vinci Science Center or all aboard the WK&S railroad train for an afternoon adventure. There's fun around every corner of the Lehigh Valley, and you can uncover it all on Discover Lehigh Valley's website. Visit discoverlehighvalley.com for more information. Welcome back to Unscripted with Russo. I'm your host, Ashley Russo. I'm having an amazing conversation with Dr. Janish Kothari from St. Luke's University Health Network, Dr. Kothari, you have been such an insightful guest telling us about your upbringing and the inspiration that you found from your family, being a really busy kid and channeling it into medicine. Let's talk a little bit about how you found your passion for cardiology. When you're in medical school, you study everything, right? And you get a shot at a bunch of different things. How did you know that that was your path and that you were meant to be on?
Like I said, science was something that always kind of sort of came easy to me. And when I thought back at the types of doctors that there were, if you looked at movies and like TV shows and stuff like that, the kind of prestige of a physician came from either being a surgeon or a cardiologist, or at least these were the things that I was coming across. And then I just didn't really like myself in the OR. And to be honest, that's because they have to wear scrubs. And that was a huge thing for me. I did not want to wear scrubs on a day-to-day basis. And I tell people this in my day-to-day profession, they just can't believe that I'm being serious. I really am being serious. So
I have to tell you something funny now. So when my husband was in medical school and we needed to do Christmas gifts for everyone, we went and bought scrubs as the pajamas that we gave the family. And they really are so ugly, but they are pretty comfortable. So I can appreciate where you didn't want to wear scrubs all day long. That's pretty funny.
Yeah, I came across cardiology and it kind of lined up with the way I think. I'm a very linear, logical thinker. In cardiology, it's not a lot of rote memorization. That's not something I like to do. It's kind of, with blood pressure, if the pipes are tight, pressure goes up. If the pipes are loose, the pressure goes down. The heart's really just a pump and you have to figure out where the issues in the pumps lie. So I had a very rudimentary understanding of that as I was coming up through the ranks and, first biology 101 and then anatomy and physiology courses that I was taking as I was progressing in my, academic career. And then every time I went on a rotation or some type of, different department where I was rotating through, I allowed myself to feel as if, hey, close my eyes for the next 30 years, this is what I'm going to do. Whether that was on OBGYN or it was on a surgery rotation or internal medicine, whatever it was, I allowed myself to feel that. It was just like a checklist. Nope, this doesn't work. This doesn't work. This doesn't work. And then I fell into cardiology and I had to go through the internal medicine training. And then I just kind of knew that this was going to be something that I was really passionate about.
Such a great way to look at it, because a lot of times people are in careers where it ebbs and flows. They move around, they can change things. And medicine really isn't like that. There's a pretty prescribed path. And when you're on it, you need to find those nooks and crannies of interest that are constantly evolving and changing. The cool thing is medicine is at such an unbelievable place right now with the way it's changing, especially in cardiology. I want to ask you about your residency, because you did that at New York Presbyterian in Brooklyn. And I understand that you had a mentor there that had worked at St. Luke's. So tell me about what that intersection was and what you learned during that residency and that ended up landing you at St. Luke's right here in Bethlehem.
His name was Dr. Hushan Rafali. He was actually a graduate from the fellowship at St. Luke's. To be honest, I didn't even know this program existed, So he came to New York Presbyterian and he was a young, hip guy, he was also fashionable. He was into suits and things like that. So me and him just kind of really just gelled. When he walked the halls, everybody said, oh, Dr. Rafali's coming, Dr. Rafali's coming, because he kind of had like a bro-y attitude with you if you were kind of cool with him. And he found the perfect balance of trying to be a mentor, a teacher, and like a friend. And I always found myself to be that kind of guy, just very relatable, approachable. I don't care how far I progress in my career, whatever status I achieve, I'm going to remember where I came from and every step of the way, how I felt when I was a med student or resident or a fellow or whatever it was. And Dr. Rafali gave me that feeling. So he kind of took me under his wing and he's like, hey, I did my training at this program. It's relatively new at that time. I think you should apply. I think you'd be great. And I literally drove down to this thing for the interview. I got here like 6 hours early by accident because I didn't know what time the interview was. So I was sitting in the parking lot at 5 a.m. for my interview. And then here I am.
That's pretty cool. I love that fashion has sort of remained in the background for you and yet started to take a step forward with Instagram and blogging. And where is it headed? I think it's really interesting. I'm always fascinated when people that have a very finite profession that they've worked really hard at also have all these other interests. And it's amazing to me how often in medicine, there are people with really artistic endeavors in their free time. So explain that a little bit. And I think it's super inspiring to our audience that you don't have to be in the box, right? There are lots of things you can add to your life.
Remember when I said that, when I told my dad I wanted to be a fashion designer, he kind of was like scoffed a little bit, but I didn't tell you the backstory of that. My dad is actually much more into fashion than I am. So when growing up, he would have everything tailored to the T. Go to the tailor, pick out his fabrics and the buttons and the threads and everything. That's who he was. When he came to this country, he obviously couldn't afford any of those things. That was his lifestyle back home. But there was a concrete lesson that he taught me growing up. Whenever you leave the house, make sure you're presentable, because people are going to talk. Give them something to talk about. And that was the lesson that I took. Make sure my shirt's pressed, my pants are ironed, my breath is fresh, my hair is in the right place, because you never know who you're going to meet. That encounter can take you to the next thing, That's something I've held very dear to me. So that's kind of where it started. So growing up, one of our favorite things to do is like literally go to the mall and just shop and try clothes on. And that's usually what a mother and daughter do. But me and my dad were doing that. And they're still till this day, like literally today, sends me a picture of, hey, these pants, do you like them? Want me to get them for you? I'm like, Dad, please, I need no more clothes. Like I'm okay. I can provide for myself and stuff now.
I love
but
that.
That's just our connection. He's so into it. And I love that he inspires me to do this.
But I love the concept. Well, so first of all, in our house, my husband and my daughter are the ones who do a lot more shopping. My son and I are sort of like, just order it, move on, go out, and they make it a whole process, which is fun. And she's headed to school in New York City. So I can't imagine what that's going to lead to. But I love that you're saying how the fashion and the clothing really represents something bigger. It represents more about the way you carry yourself and the way you want to be thought of, respected in the world, and that's the example your dad gave you. I think that that's really an important piece, that it represents more to you. And if you follow what you do, there's a lot about that connection between the choices you make about what you wear and what the bag you carry and things, to what it represents as to who you are.
And just to kind of piggyback off that a little bit, I didn't know this while it was happening. So I spent 3 years in my internal medicine training, So I would have my clinics where, I would see my patients. I was seeing them for, 2-3 years at that time. And I had this one patient, obviously I won't disclose his name or anything, but he said something to me on my last day with him. He was like, doctor, I never got to tell you this, but I really appreciate the way you carry yourself. You're in a profession where you have to make sure people are healthy, watching their weight and their figure and their diet and all that kind of stuff. And you lead that by example. You come to work carrying yourself in a very presentable manner. Your shoes are polished, your shirt's ironed, your pants are pressed. And I know that you put a lot of effort into how you want to present yourself. And I feel like that's the kind of effort you're going to put into caring for me. And that was just something that came out of nowhere. Lead by example, so to speak. If you can show people that if you care for yourself, you're willing to care for them. So I've seen some doctors that come in with, like they're not put together, they're disheveled and stuff like that. I'm like, patients are going to see that the first thing you walk in, and they're not going to be able to focus on the information that you have to tell them to help them and, help improve their health.
Really affirming comment from a patient that you never would have expected to hear it from, I'm sure. So we're going to be right back. I want to talk about the Lehigh Valley and all the things that you have come to love about this area. We'll be right back. You're listening to Unscripted with Russo. Home to the Iron Pigs in Dorney Park, Allentown is a city without limits. Food, art, dance, you name it, it's got it. Allentown's historic roots are matched with its vibrant culture to create an adventure that you'll never forget. Thinking of taking a trip? Follow Lehigh Valley, PA on Instagram, and you'll find attractions, hotels, and sites you won't want to miss. Welcome back to Unscripted with Russo. I'm Ashley Russo. If you are just tuning in, we are having a fabulous conversation with Dr. Janish Kothari. He is a fellow at St. Luke's University Health Network. And Dr. Kothari, you were just talking a little bit about your residency and your mentor who had worked at St. Luke's here in Bethlehem and this entire region. And you grew up in Jersey City, so not that far away. But a lot of times, if you haven't crossed the Delaware, it seems like a totally different place. What were your first impressions of the Lehigh Valley, and what helped you really say, I'm going to do this fellowship at St. Luke's and live in the Allentown, Bethlehem area for a couple of years?
Growing up in Jersey City, which is a very suburban area, there's a lot of things to do there. It's super accessible to New York, and that's where I spent a lot of my time, obviously my training, just growing up. So coming here was obviously a significant change for me. I knew that when I was here for these 3 years, I'm here to just get an education, get my degree in cardiology and see where the next opportunities would take me. But after like a year and a half that I've been here, I'm so pleasantly happy that I made this decision. I got a new perspective on life. I was trying to find the ideal location to live in that kind of still fit my lifestyle of wanting to live in an area that had something that was more lively and with activities and things like that. So that's when I came across the Allentown, Bethlehem area, and that's where I live now. And I've just been pleasantly surprised by so many things that I've been able to do here. Obviously in that first year with the pandemic, things were closed, so they didn't start opening up until relatively the last couple of months. But I can only imagine what a life would be like here. There's just so much to do, and it's so close to home, and you're still kind of far away where you still get that like suburban lifestyle and stuff. I didn't even know these are things I was passionate about until, me and my wife talk about it recently. Like, we could see ourselves here.
Yeah, it's a pretty area. I'm also from New Jersey, and we came here for medicine as well. And now we've been here for 17 years, and it's an amazing place. You still have access to big cities, but the open spaces and the culinary scene, and there's just so much happening here. It's so vibrant right now. Tell me about your experience at St. Luke's. We do a lot of work with St. Luke's and just love what they do for our community. Curious what your perspective is coming in as a fellow about the network at large.
Training in New York, I had a very different perspective of what medical training is supposed to be like. I was one of 110 residents when I was in New York, right, in my internal medicine training. So you had a lot of like camaraderie, a lot of friendships with people. There's just so many to choose from. But the cardiology fellowship there that I was observing while I was a medicine resident, they were very pressured and they were stressed out a lot. And I was like, oh, I guess this is what fellowship is supposed to be like. So I was trained for that. I was ready for the high volume and the high octane type of environment. Coming to St. Luke's, I was pleasantly surprised. It's not like that. I'm so fortunate and thankful that our program director, Dr. Jamshid Shirani, really takes into account the lifestyle of the fellows. Like, he wants to make sure that there's not an ounce of stress on us. And I didn't know that was even feasible in training. I'm one of 9 fellows now, and we have ample time for self-study, wellness. We have an incredible amount of education in terms of pathologies and access to technologies like echocardiography and nuclear medicine, just all the excellent training that you need to become a proficient cardiologist. That's what we have here, but it's not in that high octane, like stressful environment. And I didn't anticipate that, but I've just been pleasantly surprised with my experiences here.
One of the things that I think St. Luke's is really well known for is providing like big city medicine, like you're describing, but in a community environment with really cutting edge medicine, like really top-notch technology, top-notch training. Have you found that to be true, and how has it assisted you in where you're going in your medical practice?
100%. Just something as small as like, a cardiologist is supposed to be proficient in echocardiography, just imaging of the heart. When I talk to my friends at other hospitals, they haven't even done their echo rotation yet. And at this point in my training, I've already read over 1,000 echoes. And, that's an incredible number. I thought that was just a standard way to train. My friends at other hospitals and, cardiology fellowships, they haven't even gotten to experience that as much. So I already know that training from this hospital puts you in a very, top tier. Like Dr. Vifali, when I saw him, I was like, man, where did you train? Like, how do you know this much stuff? And then coming here, I'm like, that's why.
Great. I love to hear that. I'm going to ask you now a little bit about a couple of things. I know you've been here a lot through COVID and the pandemic, but are there some favorite things you found? Is there a place you like to go, a restaurant, something that you and your wife do in your free time that you want to share with people?
I hear Music Fest was a big thing, right? When I'm walking the hallway to get to our department, there's a wall of just all these Music Fest posters. I think it goes back to 1984 or something like that.
It's something like that. That sounds about right. Yeah.
So there's all these posters, and I guess that many years. So then this year, that when the Music Fest happened, I was like, this is so fun, all the great music and food and just activities that we're able to do. That was so fun. Just everything at the Steel Stacks, all the events that they've been able to have there, particularly for the holidays and things, I've enjoyed. Now that the PPL Center's been open, I've got to see a couple of the hockey games and just kind of seeing a lot of the activities at the Arts Walk. I live in Center Square, so they do a lot of resident activities and bar crawls and just outdoor music festivals and movie nights on a weekday.
I know, and how great is that downtown Allentown market?
Amazing. It's amazing.
It's amazing.
Me and my wife are such big foodies, coming from New York, New Jersey, we're like, food is everywhere. I am so surprised how good food is here. We went to Aman, which is kind of like on a Michelin-ish kind of restaurant. It's getting into Indian cuisine and Easton. Yeah. I got to meet the owner there, just the sweetest soul that you'll ever meet. Food is fantastic. We went to Oak across the street over there. We just love the ambiance, the drinks, the cocktails and stuff like that. And just locally where I live now, I love a couple of the restaurants here. There's this Malaysian restaurant down in Bethlehem. We love going to Zest, which is a great place. There's a Szechuan place down in Bethlehem as well. Just so much food. One of our favorite spots is the Shelby. That's close to us. We love that atmosphere there. It kind of fits our
I love
vibe.
the Shelby as well. And there are, I have to tell you, I moved here, there was not even a promenade shop. So to see where it's come is pretty amazing. Well, before I let you go, we do a little rapid fire. I just want to confirm with our audience, you have not heard these questions, correct?
Yeah, I have not.
All right. So ready?
Yeah.
What is your favorite hobby or a secret talent?
Playing basketball.
Okay. What is the best advice you've ever received?
Cock your hat, angles or attitudes.
Oh, love that. All right. What actor would you cast to play you in a movie about your life?
I mean, if he was still alive, Frank Sinatra.
Love it. If you didn't have the job you have now, what would you be doing instead?
I think you guys know that already. Designing something in fashion.
Name one person who inspires you.
My sister.
Love it. Well, Dr. Janish Kothari, thank you so much for being a part of Unscripted. It's been awesome to get to know you better. We wish you so much luck on your journey. Thank you for your service to our community and being a part of the St. Luke's family in the Lehigh Valley. It's been great having you.
Thank you for having me and giving me the opportunity and platform to share my story.
Until next time, everyone, you're listening to Unscripted.